So you want me to try and intro it? Hi, my name is Brandon Wood. I am the Innovation Lab Manager here at DI. In the lab, we're always trying to help bring projects to life, and something that we hear on a daily basis is, let's just 3D print it. So we wanted to make a video to talk about what it means to just 3D print something, the complexities that come along with printing, and what it really takes to get a nicely printed object off of a 3D printer that's useful for the projects that we create here at DI. So I'm sure you're familiar with 3D printing already, but just to make sure we're all on the same page. Traditionally, when you're building something, we're going to start with a big block of foam, a big block of aluminum. We're going to cut it down and get to the object that we're trying to create. When we're talking about additive manufacturing and 3D printing, we're starting with nothing, and we're building this object layer by layer until we have the final object we're trying to create. So a lot of times with new technologies like this, everyone wants it to be the solution for everything. When we approach 3D printing here at DI, we really try to be solution agnostic. There's some parts of some projects that are perfect applications for printing. There's other parts that maybe it's better if it is foam or if it's carved out of some other material. A great example that we have is the goat sculpture at the US Naval Academy. The majority of the sculpture is carved out of foam and it's faux painted, but the horns were incredibly, detailed and complex, and to get that detail, we did 3D print those and we assembled them and then faux painted everything to match as if it was one solid sculpture. So we've used all kinds of printing for all kinds of different projects, from replicas of turtle shells to giant sets of teeth, all the way up to the Raiders torch. So our largest 3D printing project to date was the torch at Raiders Stadium in Las Vegas. So the Raiders came to us with a budget, they came to us with an object that they had designed and a level of detail that they were hoping to achieve. And they showed us the bean in Chicago, the Cloud Gate sculpture by Anish Kapoor. That sculpture was half the size, but actually 10 times the budget of the Raiders torch. We had to figure out a way to achieve that level of detail, but within their budget, within their timeline. All of our usual processes, like carving foam or making flat panels to approximate that shape, didn't really fit the level of detail they were hoping for. So we landed on 3D printing. We found a machine that could do it. It could do all the 3D printing. It had the 5-axis machining capability to hit the level of detail and smoothness of those compound curves. And it let us do it within the budget and within the timeline that wouldn't have been possible any other way. So the torch at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas is 93 feet tall. It's composed of 225 3D printed blocks, and we printed those out of polycarbonate carbon fiber. And the reason we did that is because, number one, it was fire rated. Number two, it was structurally very strong, and so it let us design this tower and actually let it be freestanding. So we could use less material overall and actually bring down that cost and have it still be lightweight enough to fit the structure within the stadium. Time is always a consideration. So if 3D printing can take out a bunch of labor-intensive handwork, sculpting, carving, fabrication, we're gonna use 3D printing in that case. The Knoxville Zoo turtle exhibit is a great example of this. So traditionally, you would have to take a mold of all those turtle shells, and then you would cast reproductions, and then you'd have to go through and faux paint them all, figure out how you're going to mount those to the display, and it's all stuff that takes a lot of time. Instead of making molds and casting all of these turtles one by one, we actually used a 3D printer that can print in color. So we scanned all of these turtles, used that 3D information to texture everything in the computer, and then printed them off with this color 3D printer. And they come off the printer the exact correct shape and the exact color they need to be, and they get rid of all that handwork that otherwise would have been required. Form and shape is another thing that we really take into consideration. If the object that we're thinking about printing is flat and square and it's something that we can go buy off the shelf, we're not gonna try and print that. The teeth are a great example of something that you cannot buy off the shelf. The teeth themselves have a lot of detail, the gums have a lot of detail, there are multiple parts that we have to put together. So printing was the perfect way to achieve that shape in an efficient way that didn't require a bunch of hands-on sculpting. Materiality is something that's also really important. for the IDS Center benches that we printed 20 of out in Minneapolis. You know, they live out in a public space. Thousands of people are gonna see them, run into them, use them. And we had to make sure that the material we were using was durable enough to handle that kind of abuse, that they're printed with a through color. If you scratch them, you're not gonna see some other color below. And in that particular case, we used a PLA with a wood fiber infill, which is strong enough for the application, but it's not overkill. It's not like what we used on the torch, which is polycarbonate carbon fiber, structural strong. The PLA and wood fiber is strong enough to be furniture, and that's all we needed. We didn't need to spend the extra money for no reason. Finish and coating is something that we're thinking about from the very beginning. We know up front that we need a super glossy automotive finish. We're gonna make sure that we're using the right printing process to achieve that. The SOLIDWORKS space station is a great example. You know, there's parts and pieces of that are super detailed, and we need that really fine SLA printing ability to make those pieces, but there's also some painted foam on there as well that it makes no sense to print that because it's just foam blocks. There's other pieces that were made out of metal and painted because that was the easiest, correct way to make those parts of the space station. But when you view it as a whole, you know, it looks like a space station. It looks the way it's supposed to look. But we have to make sure that we're considering the best way to get to that ideal surface finish from the very beginning and using the right printing method, the right fabrication methods to achieve that. So those are all things that we're considering when we're thinking about whether or not to 3D print something. But we want to get back to that idea from the beginning of let's just 3D print something. What does that really mean to take something, an idea from a sketch all the way to a perfect finished object?